Hi there, business owner. Do you want a better understanding of business finance, what your numbers actually mean, and stories of the highs and lows of business, where I'll be sharing my tips and tricks every week? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to the 3Bs podcast with Stephanie. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the 3Bs podcast. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2024. I can't believe how quickly it's come around. And welcome to January. It's a new start for so many people. And this week I wanted to wish you a Happy New Year, enter 2024 the way we want to go on for the rest of it, and talk about my industry and why, as an accountant, January is our busiest time. There's a few factors into this and every practice is different, but these are the things that I come across when I talk to other accountants and bookkeepers in the industry, specifically in January. So enjoy the episode. So let's start with January and the workload. So the workload in January naturally increases for a number of reasons across accountants and bookkeepers, but mainly it is tax season, tax return season. It's really important to note that in January, like any other month, there's also payrolls to run, there's bookkeeping to be done, there's VAT returns to be done, corporation tax and end of years for annual accounts. So self-assessment and tax returns alone are not the only reason why the workload naturally increases. However, we often see across the industry that huge spike in workload in January, mainly due to point number 2, which is deadline dancers. Over Christmas, I myself had at least 5-6 different new inquiries from new clients I've never worked with who suddenly want their tax return doing. Now, as awkward as this probably sounds, I'm going to be quite blunt here. You've had since January last year to get your things in order. The tax year ended in April of 2023. So why are we now in January of 2024? Business owners and self-employed sole traders are suddenly looking for a bookkeeper and accountant right now to submit their tax return. It's not the best use of an accountant. It really isn't. Once a year is no longer the norm, and we cannot help you once the tax year has passed. The clients I work with on a monthly and quarterly basis, we can prepare and plan for any tax bill that's due. We can prepare and plan to make sure we strategically use the finances in the business to maximise all the different grants and all the different allowances and expenses that are allowed to be used. Things like at the end of every VAT quarter, I will send my clients an email and say, just so you know, this is the last week of your quarter. If they're on the accrual basis, that means that any invoices they want to reclaim VAT on, now is a good time to put an order in with a supplier if they're a product-based business. The same as if they are on an accrual basis, their sales invoices. So if there's sales invoices that they know won't be paid until next quarter, it's better to invoice them after the VAT period's ended. So the VAT will be due in the next quarter when you've received the funds for it, rather than the VAT being due at the point of invoice, which is what the accrual basis is, and then having to pay that VAT in that quarter, sometimes before you've received the payment for that invoice. A really cool statistic, I like a statistic as you guys probably know by now, is that on Christmas Day, the HMRC revealed that 4,757 tax returns were being submitted on Christmas Day. Now, I saw a lot of information on social media from various different bookkeepers and accountants that were quite shocked by that figure. Now, I was shocked by that figure, but not for the same reason that I think everybody else was. I think everybody else was quite shocked that people were working on Christmas Day. Now, that level of tax returns being submitted on Christmas Day says one of two things to me. Either it's the only break sole traders are getting now, specifically people that are in the beauty industry, so hairdressers, makeup artists, and the construction trade. That Christmas period is probably the only time they get off when they are sole traders, so they're doing it on their only time they've got off, which could be rectified if they use a bookkeeper or accountant who could take away the stress and help them out. I'll probably say that a lot this episode because it's something I'm really, really passionate about. Or they don't celebrate Christmas. Not everybody celebrates Christmas, and those that celebrate don't necessarily celebrate it on the 25th of December. I co-parent with my children, so we didn't get them back until 4 p.m. Christmas Day. So on Christmas Day morning, I was working because I had that time available and nothing better to do. So I am not one to rest. I probably should rest more than I do. But on Christmas Day morning, my fiance's having a lie-in. He's snoring away. I got some social media things done and some posts ready to go up and some marketing for my practice, knowing that January is going to be very busy me doing client work. So I thought that was really cool and I wanted to share that with you all. And number 3, I think, is probably the most important, and that is lack of organisation. And that goes both ways. That is a lack of organisation by the client or the person who needs a self-assessment filing, and lack of organisation by the accountants themselves. Often accountants are unfortunately still in the Stone Age and do not have the correct systems and processes to enable them to deal with the capacity that they're working with. Also, as I said earlier, deadline dancers, people who leave it to the last minute rather than being organised, cause extra stress to themselves, extra stress to the accountants, and it's not beneficial for either party. And following on from that is lack of information, number 4. So lack of information is not providing the information that the accountant needs to correctly process it. That could be bank statements, that could be invoices, that could be information regarding any assets you've purchased or disposed of within the year. There'll be things that the accountants need to check in their line of doing a self-assessment or a tax return to fully understand the picture, to correctly allocate any available allowances, such as the annual investment allowance or small employer's allowance, and to double check that everything matches correctly for the payroll, for example, and that employer's allowance has been claimed if you are eligible, saving you up to £5,000 each year in national insurance contributions. And the 5th reason that your accountant might be extra stressed this January is delayed client responses. Now, we're all running business, and as a business owner myself, I understand it's not always easy to get back to every email in your inbox straight away. However, there is nothing worse as a bookkeeper or an accountant doing a self-assessment when you have sent the information to the client, you're waiting on one answer from them, or you're waiting for them to sign off their tax return. We use ZeroSign, so ours is all done digitally, so it doesn't matter where you are in the world. If you've got internet connection, you will be able to log in, check your self-assessment, check you're happy with everything that we've done for the tax return, and electronically sign it off before we send it to the HMRC. And there's nothing worse than what often happens is it gets to the 3rd week of January and we are spending our time in practice chasing these signatures or chasing for a response from our client in order to finish what we need to do. And that then has a knock-on effect to other clients and their self-assessments. And it causes so much unnecessary stress. Now, I'm not asking you to instantly reply when your accountant or bookkeeper sends you an email, but what I would ask is that you do it in a timely fashion. And above all else, if you do it before January, then you don't have this time pressure. The accountant is less stressed. You're less stressed. You'll know exactly what you need to pay in January and any payment on account that's due. And overall makes the tax return experience a lot easier and a lot nicer. This stress is completely unnecessary and does not need to happen. And that brings us to the end of episode 40 of the 3Bs podcast. I really hope that helps and you took something from it to help you build a better business. If you are struggling with self-assessments and you need any help, our books are full for 22-23, but they are open for 23-24 as part of our service package. We don't do self-assessment alone at ABCS UK, but we do it as a package, either monthly or quarterly, enabling you to really understand your business and make better financial decisions. If that's you, get in touch. We're on all social medias at ABCS UK, or you can send us an email to info@abcsuk.com. Happy January. To the fellow accountants that I know listen to this podcast, I wish you lots of luck and I will see you on the other side in February. Everybody else, I'll see you next week for the next episode. And that brings us to the end of another week of the 3Bs podcast with Stephanie. Thank you so much for listening. I'd really appreciate it if you could like, subscribe, rate and review this podcast wherever you are listening to it, so that I can reach more business owners and help them build better businesses. See you next week for the next episode.